Modern Christianity doesn't really understand the turmoil that existed at the beginning of Christianity. Not just the pursuit of the early Christians by the Romans, but actually the confusion about the teachings of Jesus Christ. It was not the Jews who converted quickly into Christianity, but rather it was descendants of the Ionian Greeks who were the first Christians. And these are the letters that Paul wrote to the various Christian communities in Greece. These peoples were waiting for the coming of the Logos. They were taught that he would come, and they realized that he did come. And so they were the first Christians. And these Ionian Greeks were descendants of the founders of philosophy, of logic, of reason, of science, of medicine, Hippocrates, Pythagoras, Euclid, Archimedes, these type of people who are in today's tongue still because of the logic that they brought us. So it wasn't until the 2nd century that Jesus sent the promise of the Spirit of truth to come and teach all things. Because as he was teaching his disciples, there was much that he could not tell them. They could not understand it. They were simple peoples. But also it was unbearable for them. And that's what he left his disciples with. He said to them, I have much to teach you, but it's unbearable for you. So I will send the Spirit of truth to teach all the truth. And in the 2nd century and the 3rd century, a teacher appeared, Origen of Alexandria, who spent his entire life explaining the teachings of Jesus and explaining the entire Bible. He is the only scholar ever to lay out side by side all of the early Bibles next to each other and find omissions, errors, falsifications in the various versions from the Aramaic, the Hebrew, and the Greek versions. He created a document called the Hexapla, which has never been repeated ever. After doing that, he had a complete understanding of the Old Testament as Jesus understood it. Jesus fought with the Pharisees and the scribes because they didn't understand what the Old Testament actually said. At this basis, Origen produced over 6,000 books, teaching us very logical terms, very simple terms about the meaning of Jesus's teachings and how it related to the meanings of the prophets' teachings. The unbearable truth that Origen taught, that Jesus couldn't teach his disciples, is that we are all part of the fallen hosts of heaven. Could you imagine Jesus telling his disciples that all of you who are following me once betrayed me and were cast out of heaven and spent an eternity in hell, and now I had to come to restore God's heaven by creating a path of restoration for all the fallen to come back? They wouldn't have understood that. Modern Christians don't understand that today. They don't understand what happened to the 1/3 of heaven that fell with Lucifer. They can't comprehend that one day, too, Lucifer will come home. He is the prodigal son that Jesus talks about. He is the younger child of Jesus. He is the firstborn of God's creation in heaven. And he betrayed Jesus. But one day, eventually, God will forgive him and let him come home, and all that followed him. We just have begun this path of restoration 2,000 years ago, and this earth has many millions and billions of years left of useful life in it before it burns up in the sun. So this path of restoration is a very, very long path, but it's a path for everybody. Everybody who died, everybody who's living, everybody who will live. We all will have the chance to learn and relearn our true purpose and find our true home. That is the good news that Jesus taught. It has nothing to do with damnation, with hate. It's all this unbelievable love of God. Unbelievable that he will eventually allow Lucifer back to heaven after he's been restored to his former beauty.